You know that feeling, that heavy, crushing reality when the numbers don't add up, when the project you poured your soul into collapses, when the relationship that defined you dissolves into ash. It's not just failure. It's the sense of cosmic injustice, the cold certainty that the universe is rigged against you. You look around and you see others cruising, achieving, succeeding, but your path is nothing but landmines. You ask the question everyone asks: why do my problems feel so unique, so relentless? Why does every breakthrough immediately precede a catastrophe? Why does the moment I feel financially secure, the car break down, or the market crash? We call these obstacles demons. In the language of this practice, we call them Hema. They are not external entities in the sky. They are the fundamental, structural resistance to your enlightenment, to your victory, manifesting as debt, as illness, as betrayal. Most people believe these obstacles are proof that they are on the wrong path. They believe failure is a sign to retreat. They see the poison and think, I must avoid it, or I must wait for the pain to pass before I can begin again. This is the great illusion. This is where 99% of people fail. Because the true, radical strategy of the ultimate life practice, the strategy of Nichiren Buddhism, is to understand that the poison itself is the single necessary ingredient for the medicine. The failure is not the problem. The failure is the exact raw material you need to build the victory. You are not cursed. You are being perfectly equipped. This is the principle of transforming poison into medicine. Hensoku Iyaku. It means that the deeper the failure, the more potent the material you have to work with. The greater the debt, the greater the potential for wealth. The greater the illness, the greater the potential for vibrant, absolute health.
To understand how to weaponize your worst moment, you must first understand the man who perfected this strategy in the face of total annihilation. We talk about Nichiren Daishonin not as a historical figure, but as the blueprint for the unconquerable life. His life was not one of quiet meditation in a serene temple. It was a 50-year siege, a relentless confrontation with the highest levels of political, religious, and existential threat. He was born in 1222 in a small fishing village in Japan, a time of profound civil war and natural disaster. Famine, plague, earthquakes. The common person lived in a constant state of terror, believing they were in the latter day of the law, a chaotic era where true Buddhist teachings were lost. Nichiren was a keen observer. He saw the suffering, and he saw that the established Buddhist schools of the day were failing to alleviate it. They were teaching escapism. They were teaching complexity. They were teaching retreat from the world.
He dedicated himself to mastering the entirety of the Buddhist canon, seeking the singular teaching that could actually transform society, transform the individual, and end the age of darkness. He spent decades in study, consuming every sutra, every commentary, every philosophical debate. And he arrived at one single, unavoidable conclusion. The highest teaching, the one that holds the key to unlocking the full potential of human life and transforming this corrupt, suffering world into a pure land, was enshrined in the Lotus Sutra. And his declaration of this truth was not a gentle suggestion. It was a declaration of war against the status quo, against the established power structures, and against the fundamental inertia of human suffering. In 1253, at the age of 32, he stood up and proclaimed the definitive practice, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That moment, that single, uncompromising declaration, was the beginning of his transformation of poison into medicine.
It immediately generated the first wave of obstacles, the first Hemma. Because when you declare your purpose, when you commit to your truth, the universe immediately tests the depth of that commitment. And the tests were brutal. They were immediate. They were designed to crush him completely. His declaration was not met with applause. It was met with stones, with fire, and with swords. The established religious orders, the ones Nichiren had challenged by stating their teachings were incomplete, immediately mobilized the political machinery against him. They could not defeat his logic, so they sought to destroy the vessel. He was expelled from his temple. His hut was burned down. He was chased by mobs, beaten, and constantly forced to flee. This was not a theoretical debate. This was survival warfare waged against a single man committed to a singular truth. The authorities, under pressure from the powerful established schools, banished him to the Izu Peninsula.
This was the first exile, a brutal test of isolation and endurance. But in exile, he did not retreat. He did not compromise. He wrote. He solidified his conviction. Think about that for a moment. Most people, when faced with overwhelming resistance, assume they made a mistake. They assume the universe is punishing them. They assume they must soften their stance, dilute their message, or quit the path entirely. Nichiren taught the opposite. He taught that the greater the teaching, the greater the opposition. The purity of the diamond is proven by the pressure required to crush it. If his teaching were weak, harmless, or irrelevant, the establishment would simply ignore him. The fact that the entire system was mobilizing to silence him proved that he had hit the core truth. The resistance was proof of effectiveness. The ultimate test came in 1271, the Tatsunokuchi persecution.
The government, having failed to silence him through exile and beatings, decided on the final solution: execution. Nichiren was arrested, dragged through the streets of Kamakura, bound and surrounded by soldiers. He was taken to the execution grounds at Tatsunokuchi Beach. This was the moment of ultimate failure, the moment where the poison of the establishment was supposed to deliver the final, crushing blow. But as he faced the executioner, Nichiren did not plead. He did not repent. He looked at his executioners and declared that they were about to kill the pillar of Japan, the man entrusted by the Buddha to save the world. He stood fully exposed, his life about to end. Yet his inner state was one of absolute, unwavering victory. And then, as the executioner raised the sword, the impossible happened. A brilliant object, a flash of light, appeared in the sky, terrifying the soldiers and the executioner, causing them to drop their weapons and scatter. The execution was abandoned. Nichiren was spared, only to be immediately exiled again, this time to the remote and frigid island of Sado, a place few ever returned from. Why is this story essential to your life right now? Because Nichiren survived the ultimate failure, the literal moment of death, and he transformed it into the ultimate victory. This is the definition of turning poison into medicine. The near execution at Tatsunokuchi was not a setback. It was the moment he shed his identity as a mere mortal, as a scholar named Nichiren, and fully manifested his mission as the votary of the Lotus Sutra. He realized that the greatest obstacles, the Hema, the devilish functions, the forces actively trying to prevent enlightenment, are not external enemies. They are the necessary friction required to polish the mirror of your life. The deeper the failure, the darker the moment of despair, the more potent the material you have been given to create the highest level of enlightenment.
When you hit rock bottom, you are not being punished by fate. You are being handed the exact, raw chemical compound needed for the most profound transformation. Your failure is the necessary prerequisite for your unique, undeniable success. Your financial ruin, your health crisis, your professional betrayal, these are not interruptions to your success story. They are the main plot device. They are the Hema that prove you are aiming high enough. If you are facing no obstacles, it means you are playing small. You are living a life that is comfortable, predictable, and ultimately meaningless. The moment you commit to your purpose, the moment you declare your own Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, the resistance will rise up to meet you. This is the guarantee. This is the contract you sign with the universe. And Nichiren's life is the proof that the greater the resistance, the greater the power you are generating.
The Sado exile, the coldest, darkest period of his life, was where he wrote his most important treatises, where he solidified the practice, and where he fully understood the mechanism of converting suffering into absolute happiness. He taught that we must not run from the suffering of this corrupt world. We must plunge into it. We must use the suffering itself as the fuel. We must use the failure as the strategy. Nichiren was not teaching escapism. He rejected the prevailing schools that sought refuge in some distant, imagined Pure Land. He looked at the violence, the famine, the political corruption of 13th century Japan, the ultimate Mappo environment, and declared, "This is the arena." He understood that the fundamental mistake of humanity is believing that suffering is an aberration. Suffering is the default setting of this world. It is the friction that proves existence. The practice he established is not about removing the suffering. The practice is about changing the perception of the suffering. It is about changing the capacity of the person experiencing it. He taught that true enlightenment, the highest state of Buddhahood, is only possible in this specific, messy, difficult reality. You cannot attain it by running away. You must dive into the deepest mud, the mud of your debt, the mud of your illness, the mud of your broken relationships, and draw the lotus from it. The Lotus Sutra promises that the moment you commit to the practice, the life state of Buddhahood is immediately activated within you. But that Buddhahood doesn't eliminate the challenge. It changes your capacity to face it. It changes your capacity to see the Hema, the devilish functions, the obstacles, not as roadblocks, but as the audience cheering your victory. They exist specifically to test the sincerity and depth of your commitment.
Think about the logic. If your commitment is superficial, if your goal is small and self-serving, the obstacles will be minor. The universe will barely notice you. But if your purpose is earth-shattering, if you are truly aiming to change the destiny of your family line, of your community, If you are declaring a revolutionary inner commitment, the universe sends its heaviest resistance. The resistance proves the value of the target. This is why Nichiren wrote, "The deeper the roots, the sturdier the trunk. The greater the trial, the greater the reward." We often pray for ease. We beg for the path to be cleared. We should be praying for capacity. We should be praying for the wisdom to utilize the very things designed to destroy us. That utilization is the definition of turning poison into medicine. It is not magic. It is the ultimate strategy of martial arts, using the opponent's force against themselves. Your financial disaster is a massive, crushing force.
Do not absorb it and break. Use its energy. Convert its raw despair into the absolute determination to never settle again. That conversion is the engine of your destiny. Your deepest failure is the proof that you are ready for the next stage of growth, because only a person who has failed profoundly understands the true value of victory. Nichiren's teaching is a mandate to live a life of absolute engagement. There is no retirement from the fight. There is only the continuous, determined act of polishing the mirror of your life, using the dust and the dirt, the obstacles, as the polishing agent itself. He gave us the technology to perform this conversion. He gave us the Daimoku. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is not a plea. It is the declaration that you, right now, in this moment of suffering, are utilizing the ultimate law of the universe to convert the poison in your hand into the exact medicine required for your victory. It is the engine that shifts the energy of the Hema from destructive to constructive. It is the sound of your life force declaring, "I accept the challenge, and I will use this failure to win." This principle of turning poison into medicine was not a philosophical exercise for Nichiren Daishonin. It was the ironclad strategy he used to survive an entire nation dedicated to his destruction. If you are struggling with a financial collapse or a crushing personal betrayal, understand that your trials are massive, yes, but they pale in comparison to the sheer, sustained assault Nichiren faced. He was not merely ignored, he was relentlessly hunted, starved, and exiled. He was a revolutionary declaring an absolute truth in a rigid, hostile feudal system. The ruling powers, terrified by his accurate prophecies of coming national disaster, saw him as the ultimate Hema, the ultimate obstacle to their power. They tried to silence him. They tried to break him. They tried to kill him.
In 1271, the government sentenced him to death. This was the Tatsunokuchi persecution. He was brought to the execution grounds, and as the sword was raised above his neck, a celestial light, a brilliant object, reportedly shot across the sky, terrifying the executioners. The attempt was aborted. Nichiren was spared, but immediately exiled to Sado Island, a frozen, desolate rock in the Sea of Japan, known as the graveyard for political enemies. It was a death sentence delivered by slow consumption, cold, starvation, disease, and the constant threat of assassination by local zealots. This was the ultimate poison. This was the moment where everything should have collapsed. This was the failure of his mission, the apparent victory of his enemies. What did he do on Sado? Did he despair? Did he pray for the snow to stop and the government to recall him? No. He used the poison as the forge.
He used the isolation, the cold, and the proximity of death to deepen his realization of the ultimate law. He used the persecution to prove the truth of the Lotus Sutra, which predicts that those who spread the law will be met with the fiercest trials. He realized that the severity of the persecution was not proof of his weakness, but the undeniable evidence of the profound power of his teaching. The deeper the Hema, the greater the potential for enlightenment. He used Sado Island, the place designed to destroy him, to write some of his most profound treatises, texts that form the bedrock of his philosophy today. He converted his exile into the ultimate spiritual laboratory. He transformed the threat of death into the absolute conviction of immortality. This is the concrete, historical proof of turning poison into medicine.
He took the absolute 0 point of human experience, exile, starvation, and the threat of beheading, and used that raw, destructive energy to establish a teaching that would span 7 centuries and circle the globe. He did not pray for the obstacles to vanish. He prayed for the strength and the wisdom to use the obstacles as the fuel for his purpose. When you face your own Sado Island, be it the bankruptcy notice, the divorce papers, or the diagnosis, you must remember this history. Your failure is not a sign that the universe hates you. It is the universe providing the exact, necessary raw material for your greatest victory. The financial collapse you are experiencing is not debt. It is the heavy, dense earth from which the sturdiest tree will grow. You must apply the technology. You must chant the Daimoku with the absolute determination to convert that despair into the strategic wisdom required to rebuild on a foundation that will never crack again.
The depth of the failure dictates the height of the subsequent victory. If your failure is small, your victory will be modest. If your suffering is profound, your potential for profound, earth-shattering victory is equally massive. You must stop seeing the struggle as something inflicted upon you and start seeing it as the required curriculum for the leader you are meant to become. The universe never gives you a trial you cannot convert. It only gives you trials that demand you utilize the highest aspect of your life, your Buddha nature, to execute the conversion. The Hema, the demons, the obstacles, they are not outside forces waiting to trip you up. They are the mirror reflecting your deepest doubts and your greatest potential. They are the energy required for the transformation. Your job is not to fight the demons. Your job is to absorb their energy, redirect it, and convert it into the pure, unstoppable momentum of your destiny. This is the strategy of the ultimate victor.
The energy you must absorb is not gentle. It is the raw, terrifying force of destruction. Look again at the life of Nichiren Daishonin. His challenge was not a mild inconvenience or a bad quarter report. His challenge was the systematic, state-sponsored attempt to erase his existence and silence his voice forever. He was exiled not once, but twice, to the most desolate corners of Japan. He was starved, his disciples were imprisoned and killed. And then there was Tatsunokuchi. This is the ultimate case study in converting poison into medicine. In 1271, the authorities decided that exile was insufficient. They dragged him to the execution grounds, intending to sever his life and his teaching with a single stroke. Imagine that moment. The dirt road, the cold air,
the executioner raising the blade. This is the absolute zero point of human despair. The Hema, the demon of death itself, was standing directly in front of him, physically manifested by the blade. What was his response?
Did he beg? Did he waver? No. He used that visceral, immediate threat of annihilation as the final, purifying crucible. He understood that the persecution was not meant to destroy him, but to prove the law he was chanting. The intensity of the attack served only to illuminate the absolute, indestructible nature of his inner life. At that moment, facing death, Nichiren shed his transient identity, the ordinary man, the priest, the exile, and revealed the eternal, inherent Buddha nature. This event is known as Hosha Kempan, casting off the transient and revealing the true. The sword that was meant to end his life became the precise catalyst required to reveal the ultimate truth of the universe. The poison was consumed, absorbed, and transformed into the most potent medicine. The authorities failed to kill him. The executioner faltered, reportedly stunned by a celestial phenomenon, a blinding light in the sky.
But the true miracle was not the light outside. It was the unflinching resolve forged within Nichiren himself. He did not survive by chance. He survived because he had already won the war within his own life. The external attack could not touch the absolute reality he had established through his practice. This is the blueprint for your own struggles, your financial crisis, your health scare, your ruined reputation. These are the executioner's blades held against your neck. You must use that pressure, that fear, that absolute certainty of failure to execute your own Hoshaku Kenbon. You must cast off the transient identity of the victim, the failure, the one who is owed an apology by the universe. You must reveal the true self, the resilient, strategic, invincible leader who has the inherent capacity to overcome any obstacle. The depth of the persecution Nichiren endured provided the material for the greatest revelation in human history.
After Tatsunokuchi and Sado Island, he was no longer just a teacher of the Lotus Sutra. He was the embodiment of the principle of transforming fundamental darkness into enlightenment. And from that crucible of suffering, he inscribed the Gohonzon, the mandala that maps the entire universe and confirms that every living being possesses the Buddha nature. Understand this deeply. The Gohonzon is not an abstract religious object. It is the visual record of Nichiren's victory over the Hema. It is the strategic diagram drawn directly from the experience of total, agonizing failure. When you look at your own suffering, when you look at the mountain of debt or the ruins of your business, you are looking at the raw ink necessary to write your own personal Gohonzon. You are looking at the exact, perfect energy required for your spiritual and material breakthrough.
Your job is to sit down, face the mirror of the Gohonzon, or the mirror of your own life, and chant the Daimoku with the conviction that your current suffering is the greatest gift the universe could have given you. It is the necessary fuel. It is the undeniable proof. It is the strategic advantage that your competitors who have not suffered so deeply will never possess. They lack the density of experience required for true, unshakable victory. You must stop praying for easy times.
You must start praying for the wisdom and the power to utilize the harshness of your current reality to forge a life of absolute, undeniable triumph. Nichiren's strategy was simple. When the obstacle is highest, the power of the law is strongest. The deeper the valley, the higher the mountain you are destined to climb. Nichiren did not see the government officials who exiled him as the primary obstacle. He saw them as instruments.
They were merely the physical manifestation of the greater internal enemy. The true battlefield was always the heart of man. The fundamental darkness, the radical ignorance residing in the core of life, that is the source of all Hema. That is the force that seeks to compromise your resolve, to whisper that you are not worthy, that the struggle is too great, that failure is final. If Nichiren had flinched, if he had compromised his belief even once during the execution attempt at Tatsunokuchi, the law would have been extinguished. The entire trajectory of human spiritual history would have shifted. The moment of Tatsunokuchi was not just a historical event, it was a cosmic negotiation. Nichiren was proving, under the highest possible pressure, that the law protects the person who upholds it, but only if that person is willing to face ultimate destruction without fear. Your current failure, that massive financial debt, that relationship collapse, the professional ruin, is your Tatsunokuchi. It is your moment to prove that the law resides within you, not outside you. You are being tested not on your ability to avoid pain, but on your capacity to use the pain itself as the engine of transformation. This is the ultimate strategy of Hensoku Doku, transforming poison into medicine. The persecution was the poison. The revelation of the Gohonzon was the medicine. The poison was necessary. Without the extremity of the external attack, the internal revelation could not have been so profound, so absolute, so universally applicable. When you sit before the mirror of the Gohonzon, and you unleash the sound of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you are not asking for a favor from an external deity. You are activating the exact mechanism that Nichiren perfected under the sword.
You are declaring that the energy that created the debt, the fear, and the failure is the identical energy required for the indestructible life you are building. You are reversing the polarity of the universe within your own heart. You are taking the poison, the absolute worst conditions you can imagine, and using its density, its power, to create the most potent medicine. This is why the greatest victories are always forged in the deepest despair. The magnitude of the obstacle guarantees the magnitude of the reward. Do not try to minimize your suffering. Do not try to rationalize away your failure. Magnify the problem in your mind. Stare into the abyss of your current circumstance and understand that this density, this pressure, is precisely what is required to compress and forge the Buddha state within your life. Your suffering is not a mistake. It is the perfect, necessary raw material. It is the fuel for the revolution of your destiny. The failure is the strategy.
You must stop viewing your life through the lens of cause and effect separated by time. The moment you decide to use the suffering,
The moment you chant Daimoku with the conviction that this failure is the key to your victory, that failure ceases to be a past cause and becomes the immediate effect of your enlightened life state. The poison is absorbed, neutralized, and then utilized. The strategy of the Lotus Sutra is radical inclusion. It states that the common mortal, the person riddled with earthly desires, the person who has failed spectacularly, that person is the Buddha. The failure is not a detour, it is the direct path. This is the strategic advantage you must wield against the Hemma. They expect you to collapse. They expect you to doubt. They expect you to quit when the suffering reaches its peak. Your defiance, your unshakable conviction that the deeper the hole, the greater the treasure you will unearth, is the single most powerful weapon you possess.
Nichiren gave you the technology. He drew the map of victory directly from his own agony. Now, you must execute the strategy. You must use the agony of your current reality to prove the absolute, unassailable power of the law. Look at the life of Nichiren Daishonin himself. He did not teach this strategy from a comfortable palace or a serene mountaintop. He forged the law in the crucible of absolute, lethal opposition. His life was a perpetual series of orchestrated failures designed by the Hemma to destroy him. Banishment, assaults, near decapitation at Tatsunokuchi, and finally, the ultimate poison, the exile to Sado Island. Sado was not a vacation. It was a death sentence delivered by the establishment. A frozen, hostile landscape where starvation and exposure were guaranteed to finish what the executioner could not. If ever there was a moment for a man to doubt the efficacy of his own faith, to beg for mercy, to rationalize his surrender, it was there. But Nichiren did not see Sado as punishment. He saw it as the strategic necessity. He saw it as the ultimate proving ground. The deeper the hole they dug for him, the higher the mountain of proof he built. He understood that the density of the suffering was the exact weight required to compress the highest state of life. The poison was the ink. It was on Sado, in the depths of winter, surrounded by enemies and facing certain death, that he wrote the seminal treatises that define the practice today. He wrote the Kanji Mohonzonsho, the object of devotion for observing the mind. He drew the definitive map of the universe, the Gohonzon, in that freezing hut. The persecution did not stop his mission. The persecution enabled his mission. It forced the crystallization of the ultimate truth. The attacks were not interruptions, they were the validation. Nichiren declared that the greater the persecution, the greater the proof that he was the votary of the Lotus Sutra. He did not ask for the suffering to stop. He used the suffering to confirm his identity and solidify the law for 10,000 years. He was turning the poison of political and physical annihilation into the medicine of eternal truth. He was demonstrating, not theoretically, but existentially, the principle of Esho Funi, the inseparability of life and environment. The miserable environment of Sado became the stage for the emergence of the true Buddha. When you face your own Sado, your financial collapse, your health crisis, your betrayal, you must adopt this same strategic mindset. Your failure is the stage. Your suffering is the script. The Hemma are not there to defeat you. They are there to testify to your victory. They are the audience that confirms the magnitude of your enlightenment.
You must stop seeking comfort. You must stop waiting for the conditions to improve before you start chanting with power.
The condition itself, the failure, the despair, the overwhelming debt, that is the trigger. That is the leverage point. It is time to stop playing defense. It is time to go on the offense and use the full weight of your current defeat to smash the limitations of your past karma. The moment you stop running from the poison and start using it, the entire karmic structure of your life begins to vibrate and collapse. This is the revolution. This is the victory. And it starts now. You have the strategy. Now you need the technology. The technology is the sound. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is not a prayer asking for rescue. It is the declaration that your life, right now, in the midst of this absolute chaos, is the mystic law. It is the sound that summons your indestructible, enlightened self from the deepest pit of despair. You are not chanting to escape the situation. You are chanting to generate the energy required to observe the true nature of the current obstacle.
You are converting the raw, destructive energy of your failure, the shame, the anger, the crushing weight of the debt, into the kinetic force of enlightenment. This is the principle of turning poison into medicine in its most direct application. The poison is the Hema, the devilish function that seeks to destroy your faith and your life. The medicine is the manifestation of Buddhahood that arises specifically because the poison was so potent. The strength of the medicine is proportional to the strength of the poison. If your failure is catastrophic, your resulting victory must be monumental. That is the physics of the mystic law. Understand this. When you chant, you are not merely seeking a temporary financial fix or a medical reprieve. You are fundamentally changing the causal structure of your life. You are installing a new, unbreakable foundation upon which all future success will be built. You must stop treating the Daimoku as a last resort or a spiritual band-aid.
It is the ultimate weapon. It is the engine of instantaneous, fundamental transformation, the moment-to-moment revolution known as Ichinen Sanzen. When you sit down to chant, you are not asking the universe for help. You are commanding the universe to align with the ultimate reality that resides within you. You are asserting your Buddhahood and demanding that your environment, your finances, your relationships, your health reflect that reality instantly. This is why Nichiren demanded that his followers chant with the conviction that they are already Buddhas. You must chant from the state of victory, not from the posture of defeat. Look at your failure. Look at the balance sheet. Look at the diagnosis. Do not avoid the numbers. Use them as the target. Your Daimoku must be focused on turning this specific poison into this specific medicine. You do not chant vaguely for happiness. You chant to transform the $50,000 debt into the $500,000 success that validates the law. You chant to transform the betrayal into the absolute trust that defines your ultimate mission. You chant to transform the illness into the ironclad health that allows you to fulfill your vow. The moment you declare this intention, the moment you fully commit to using the failure as the fuel, you activate the greatest strategic advantage in existence. You stop being a victim of karma and become the master of destiny. The obstacles are powerful because your mission is profound. The demons are loud
because your potential is infinite. Do not waste this failure. Do not mourn the collapse. Do not seek comfort. Take the full measure of your defeat, hold it in your mind, and use the sound of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to smash it into the raw material of your greatest victory. The time for philosophical contemplation is over. The time for action is now. Go out there and turn the poison into the medicine. Make your current suffering the undeniable, irreversible proof of the mystic law.
This is your Sado Island. This is your moment. Win.